Trump and Putin are getting together to make a deal that will potentially reshape the world. In this video, we're going to apply the astrological lens to decode this key relationship of our times, as well as the coming phase of the negotiations, in order to understand what's going to come out of this. Is this going to be us dodging World War III and ushering in a new golden age of peace and prosperity? Or is there going to be losers, and is there going to be an inevitable slithering back into conflict and chaos? Let's go and let's find out. All right, the world is changing faster than ever before, probably faster than, the last hundred years, or if not hundreds of years, definitely faster than anybody in living memory could tell you about. And one big step in this new emerging world is that Trump and Putin are now talking and are now ready, apparently, to get together and make a deal, not just to end the Ukraine war, but to hash out a new world order. They're going to be, it started with that phone call and very quickly went on to the meeting of Rubio and Lavrov and their teams in Saudi Arabia. And very quickly it emerged that they're not just talking about the Ukraine war, they're actually talking about lots of other things, the Middle East and energy and the global economy and Africa. They're going to be talking about lots of other things, and Ukraine will be part of that conversation. So in this video, what we'll do is we'll look at the astrology, not just of Putin and Trump, right, at the Synastry, to understand, what are the forces that are working in this relationship, this key relationship of our times, as I've called it. But we'll also look at the astrology of the coming weeks and months, specifically with regards to this deal, this potential deal as it's emerging, because it's going to hold very clear clues for us of where this whole thing is going to and who will be the winners and the losers of this new world order as it's going to be hashed out and worked out by Team Trump and Team Putin, right? So make sure to watch this video till the very end, right? Now, this is some big stuff, obviously, right? This is some big stuff for all of us, right? And it's good that we have the astrology, because the astrology allows us to understand the context in a way that no other approach, no other science, no other art can, right? The archetypal energies, that's what it's all about. So this relationship, let's start with the relationship, with the Trump-Putin relationship. Because, again, these are two big leaders. They are very, very powerful people, maybe, two of the three most powerful people on the planet right now together, if you count Xi Jinping as well. And their relationship is very important. In general, the relationship of leaders is super important, right? It's because the leader represents the karma of the nation, right? Spiritually represents the karma of the nation. And the individual karmas of the leaders, how they relate with each other, is a mirror image of the relationship of the nations and of the underlying forces, right? So it's really important to look at that relationship. It's not just some kind of gossip kind of thing that, they like each other, they don't like. It's not about that. It's about like, how do these archetypal forces relate with each other that are represented by these leaders, right? Now, let's look at the relationship by going to the Synastry. The Synastry tells you a lot, right? The Synastry is what allows you to understand how you respond to somebody when you are dealing with that person. It kind of, in most cases, it allows you to understand where the relationship is going to. If you are coupled, then you also, additionally, you want to look at the combined chart, composite chart, Davison chart, and so on and so forth. But for most relationships, the Synastry is all you need that kind of tell you where this relationship is going to, what the potentials are, and what it's going to bring, basically, right? So the one thing that stands out when you look at this chart right away is that, Putin has this 12th house thing. He has a lot of 12th house power. It's like he's kind of like this powerful guy who does things from behind the scenes, right? He makes all these relationships and all these deals behind the scenes. And Trump puts his Jupiter on Putin's sun and and Saturn, right? So this is kind of very first kind of glance, very, very obvious thing that you see when you look at the synastry. What does it mean? When somebody puts their Jupiter on your sun, this is a relationship that's going to have a lot of trust, right? A lot of mutual goodwill, a lot of generosity for each other, a lot of respect too, right? So this is very, very good for business partners normally to have that. So kind of the best aspect you can have for business partners, Jupiter on the sun, right? And this is kind of the type of business partners that trust each other blindly. If you have this for politicians, it's very good too, because they're going to really respect each other on the one hand, right? And then also the Jupiter that Trump has is also on the Saturn here of Putin, as you can see, right? So Saturn is basically, Jupiter on Saturn means that Trump in some ways has the keys for advancement for Putin, right? You have this, whenever somebody puts their Jupiter on your Saturn, the Jupiter person is the one who has the keys for advancement of the Saturn person, of growth of the Saturn person, right? And obviously in this case also makes sense because Trump is the one who can set an end to this war, right? Nobody else could before Trump can, right? And this perfectly makes sense. But what else do we got? There's more stuff. Now, Putin has a Pluto on the MC. You see this here, Pluto on the MC. And this is, MC is your public role and your role in destiny, what you'll be known for and what you're known as, right? During life, eventually, and then also in destiny, your final destiny. And it's Pluto, is on the MC, right? Pluto on the MC is, he is the archetype of the powerful man, right? Obviously, the powerful leader, the guy who always, how he walks and with the nuclear, power and all of that, right? That kind of his demeanor. And he exudes power, right? He exudes power. But also his destiny is to be, to participate in some type of dark transformation, which is Pluto on the MC as well, of the world. He's going to be known as this dark transformative figure, which he is. No, it's not a very positive placement, right? And Trump places his Mars on that MC and on that Pluto exactly. You can see this here, right? Trump's Mars is exactly on the Pluto, right? Now, this means that Trump's aggressiveness, Trump's kind of very, Trump it's a Leo Mars, right? So Trump is very, and is on Trump's ascendant too. So Trump is very, he's like a boxer. He's very good at hitting back, right? At the journalists or anybody really, lawyers, no matter who. Like nobody, Trump is like really good at hitting back. You can't attack Trump. Right? You attack Trump, you get ready to get attacked, right back. He's kind of that guy, right? And he makes his attacks very public. And it's a Leo Mars, right? Leo is like, needs to be seen, right? And this kind of public way of Trump of kind of being aggressive, right, is directly triggering Putin's power, is directly triggering Putin's MC, right? So Putin may often, perceive Trump's aggression or Trump's kind of assertiveness as directly attacking his public standing, right? Which is dangerous, obviously. A man like Putin, you don't want to kind of be publicly seen as being attacked. Even think about when they meet and they do this hand thing, like, Trump always has this handshaking thing, right? Where he pulls people and he kind of publicly asserts dominance through the handshake, right? He tried doing that with Putin. He wasn't successful, but he's going to watch out when they meet next time because Trump's going to try and do that, right? And Putin, Pluto is very powerful. Pluto is not to be messed with. It's Pluto on his Mars. So, normally the Pluto on your Mars, the Pluto person is going to be the stronger one. I'm going to show you again in a bit where there's more on this. So, Putin is not going to take it. Putin's going to do a judo move. If Trump comes in and tries to like do that handshake thing, Putin is going to do a judo move on it, right? He's going to be like, okay, I already thought about this and I'm ready for it, So that's the thing where we're seeing some potential conflict, right? And there's another thing here with potential conflict, which is that Putin's Mars is actually directly on Trump's moon and in opposition to Trump's sun. You see this here? So the aggressiveness and assertiveness of Putin, when Putin comes and says like, yo, this is what's going to be done and so on, it directly triggers Trump's most vulnerable emotional point, right? Trump can get very, very vulnerable through Putin's assertiveness. And then also it's opposite the sun, so you can even feel like attacked in his leadership or in his personality, right? So these two things, right? And also when you have somebody puts their Mars on your moon, right? It's going to be a lot of competitiveness in that relation. Always going to be very competitive. It's going to be very, very competitive kind of, always going to be some weird competitive energy there, right? And as you can see that here too. So two things that I showed you, that even though there are these guys who have a lot of respect for each other, a lot of generosity and respect, but there's a lot of competitiveness and a lot of potential conflict there just brewing, right? Just brewing. This energy is going to be very hard to handle if you handle it well, if you direct it well, right? And obviously you're going to say they should be able to do that. They're two alpha leaders, right? And both of them are, they work for the good of their people. And for the good of their people, they should be able to put aside those things, especially because they have that mutual trust and extreme mutual kind of respect and trust. Maybe they can put it aside, right? And if they can overcome the conflict potential that I just showed you, then with this synastry, they can develop incredible, tremendous power to get things done. Like they can, literally get together and change the world together. Like, get this done, let's get this done. Let's like reorder this, reorder that, right? Like let's restructure this, let's do it. Let's destroy the globalists. Let's restructure the world. Let's redo the United Nations. Kill the United Nations. Set up a new thing. All of this they can done potentially if fate and destiny and circumstances allows them to come together, and if they have personally that growth and that ability, spiritual maturity, to put aside the potential for conflict. Because potential for conflict is in the chart, and it's huge. It's huge because on the flip side, on the downside, this also is when you have Mars on your Pluto, right? It also potentially means fighting till death. Fight till death is also Mars on Pluto, right? Is also Mars on Pluto. And if it happens, who's going to have the upper hand? There's one thing that's very important, that Putin, he actually puts his Pluto, you can see this here, his Pluto, he puts his Pluto in Trump's 12th house. The Pluto is not just here on Mars, but it's in the 12th house. When somebody puts their Pluto in your 12th house, on your Mars too, it's a slight advantage for Putin in terms of who has the upper hand. Also because Donald Trump's moon is triggered with Mars, so Trump could respond very emotionally. Moon makes you emotional, right? When somebody attacks your moon, it's like, you might respond very emotionally, not like cool. Like whereas Putin is going to be super cool in his responses to Trump. But Trump might respond a bit emotionally at sometimes, right? If it gets there. God forbid, it shouldn't get there, obviously, right? It shouldn't get there. But if it gets there, that's potential. They have massive potential for conflict as well. And there's one thing that is a bit worrisome, which is that the Saturn here, Trump's Saturn, right? Trump's Saturn is in a square to Putin's Neptune, exact square to Neptune, and also to Putin's Saturn, right? So basically the structures in their lives, the structures is the government of the US and the government of Russia, are somehow at odds with each other. Saturn square Saturn. The structures are at odds with each other, right? And then Trump is going to have, when somebody has a Saturn and it's in a square to Neptune, Trump is going to have a role of disillusioning Putin. There's potential for some misunderstandings, long-term misunderstandings with very bad consequences as well, right? Saturn square Neptune. This is there too, right? So it's not all, there's a lot of difficulty in this chart. But again, all of this, it can potentially be counteracted by that very, very generous, very positive respect that they have for each other, which shows itself for that big generosity, right, that they have for each other. So this is the relationship, Trump and Putin. We might have to come back to this in future. This is just a glimpse. We haven't done the asteroids. We haven't done this and that, and also progressions, and blah, blah. We can come to this in future again. But what I want to tell you now, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and to like, and comments is very important. Comments is important for the algorithm. If you do comment, you're much, much appreciated. and you're really doing a great job for this channel and for all of humanity if you do this, because you push a little bit the algorithm, show it to a couple of people more, right? And that's a good thing to do. Now, what we are going to look at next is the upcoming weeks as this is happening, as the conversations are happening. What is going to happen in this time, right? And it's important to see the chart of the moment, This is very important. And then I'm going to tell you, at the end, I'm going to tell you, as promised, who are going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers of this new world order. Make sure to watch this video till the very end, right? We're going to go into that as well, and I'm going to give you some really, really interesting insights, right? Some really like mind-blowing insights. Now, let's go quickly into the chart. So the chart for this coming time is what? This is the chart for, this is the transits that we're having right now. What am I doing? This is what I need. I just need to basically advance the chart and have the transits, right? This is the transit. So the chart for the coming time, and basically now we're end of February. Going into March, we're going to have, first of all, Venus and Mercury getting together close to each other in Aries, right? Which makes a lot of sense. Venus and Mercury coming together means diplomacy. Mercury is communications. Venus is nice, aesthetic, beautiful. Venus and Mercury come together means diplomacy, speaking beautifully, right? About what? About war. Why? Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars, and Aries is the sign that stands with Mars together for war, obviously, right? So Venus and Mercury in Aries stands for war, diplomacy, right? This is how we work in astrology. This is how the cosmos puts together archetypal connections, right? Okay, now this war diplomacy that we have indicated for March, it's going through a plot twist because both of these planets, they're both going retrograde, right? So you have here both sort of mid-March, they both start to go retrograde. Both Mercury and Venus, they're both, you see this little R here, which means retrograde. They start to go back, right? So retrograde, I'm sure you know about Mercury retrograde, right? Mercury retrograde is that time of year when you miscommunicate and you lose your stuff and you send the wrong message, or you write a deal which you didn't read the fine print of, and then later you find out that there was something wrong with it, right? Mercury retrograde means all the thinking and communications goes backward, right? And then you have Venus retrograde happening at the same time, which also obviously means Venus-related things, love and money and pleasure. These things, they go backward, right? So typically you may have some old love stuff resurface, or you may have some old money matters resurface, and so on, right? So all of this happens. Venus and Mercury is going retrograde in March in the same degree, so it's very significant, right? So this could mean, on the one hand, that we have to revisit old contracts and old war diplomacy in this context, which would make sense and is very meaningful, right? Or on the other hand, it could mean that the war diplomacy, it starts to go backward. It doesn't move forward. It starts to stall. It starts to go backward, right? So it could mean that we have a lot of delays. Obviously, the first assumption is very, very meaningful, makes a lot of sense. And especially, you have to know Venus is going retrograde now in Aries, and it was Aries. So bear with me, it's a little bit of technical astrology, but it's going to bring really interesting insights for you. Because Venus is now for the first time going retrograde in Aries, and the last time that happened, the first out of series, and the last time that happened was 8 years ago. 8 years ago. So you have an 8-year Venus cycle where every 8 years Venus starts to go into a new sign and then it has that same sign again, right? And you can go back 8 years. So 8 years would mean spring of 2017. And if you go back 8 years, you will have had Venus in the same sign. Venus going retrograde in the same sign. So you go here, you see Venus is in Aries here, and it's retrograde, as you can see. It's here, Venus is here, and it's retrograde, same degree, right? 2017, spring of 2017. So in your personal life, it's going to mean that you can think back to spring 2017 if you want to see what kind of themes may come back in March for you, right? Around Venus-related things. But in this particular instance, for Trump, What does it mean for Trump and Putin? Well, 2017, spring 2017 was what? Was Trump's first administration. And at that time, there was the first time there was like, a flaring up of conflict in those Russian areas in Ukraine, Donbass and those areas, right, where the Russians live. The Ukrainians were starting to attack them, right, and they were starting to send these banderites, these kind of groups there, these militant groups there to fight the Russians there. And Trump was going to come and make a deal with Putin already in 2017. Already exactly 8 years back. The Venus cycle is 8 years. Trump was going to make a deal with Putin back then. And Trump many times said that, and he's right. If I had made a deal already back then, this war wouldn't have happened. Nobody would have died. It was really easy. It was easy. I could have made the deal. The Russians just didn't want NATO, and they didn't want, NATO-backed soldiers and weapons, and they wanted the Ukrainians to not attack the Russians who were living in the Russian Ukraine, and that's it. Right? It wasn't that hard. He could have made the deal. He could have made the deal, right? But 8 years ago, 2017, Trump didn't have the power to do so. Why? He had all the neocons in his government. He had Nikki Haley's and John McCain was in Congress and John Bolton, all those people. They were in his government. And not just that they were in his government, they were actually trying to bring him down with the lawfare and the Russia hoax that was, the Mueller probe, and all of that was in 2000, was that time, right? So they were basically building, globalists were building this big case against Trump that they were saying, you're colluding with Russia, you cannot be trusted, you're Putin's man, you're not, whatever. They were just building this huge hoax, right? To try to stop Trump from doing what he wanted to do in 2017. So now this cycle, exactly 8-year cycle, as I just showed you, if you come back to 2025, this can mean that this cycle is going to get closed, right? It's going to get closed in 2025. So it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay, but this is not all yet. There's one more thing I got to show you, which is about this actual, because as I just showed you, the retrograde of Venus and Mercury, it's happening in the one exact degree, in the same degree, right? The degree is the 10th degree of Aries. So what happens if we decode that degree, that 10th degree of Aries, and we add the asteroids? Like, I always do this. I go here, this is for March, right? 12th of March, like in the next couple of weeks, when we have this retrograde happen, right? Around that time. And this is the asteroids that tells us exactly the nuances of the story as they're going to unfold at this time, right? And this is where I'm going to get into telling you who will be the winners and who will be the losers of this deal and where is it going to go to after, right? So this is where we're going to get into now. Dr. V is not letting you down. Always deliver on what I tell you we're going to do, right? So now what we're going to see here is that we have, on the one hand, we have China and Russia, asteroids, China and Russia. You see here, they're together, right? So, and they're with Jupiter. They're going towards Jupiter. China and Russia are going to be close. They're not going to be separated by this deal. And actually, they're going towards a time of strength together, right? Obviously, Russia is going to come out of this as a huge winner, right? Like in front of the world, they're going to come out, look, we didn't bluff. We did what we said we're going to do. And, the Europeans, the NATO and everybody wanted to bring us down and they couldn't. And now we're making a deal, right? We're closing this thing on our terms. So that's what's going to happen. Like Russia's going to come out of this, obviously, a winner. But now America is here with Israel and Ukraine, you see here, and they're together with Chiron. So Chiron stands for the wound, but also for the wounded healer, right? A wounded healer. So the wound or healing. So America is going to go through a type of, potentially is going to have a wound, the experience of a wound, but also potential healing through the wound of its relationship with these two allies of Ukraine and Israel. Those are two different stories, obviously, but Israel is there too. I just showed it as well to you. But it's going to have, basically, there's going to be a wound to the relationship with Ukraine, but this can lead to healing of this relationship, right? Obviously, it's going to be good not to have to pay all that money, but instead to be able to get something in return, right, from Ukraine. This is going to be a healing situation for America too. But now, what about the actual deal? What about the actual deal? So when we look at the chart, we have here, on the 10th degree of Aries, we have, this is where Mercury and Venus are going to go retrograde. We have Phantomas. It stands for, deception, the charlatan. Stalingrad, it stands for the the glory of Russia, right? In the Second World War. This is the Second World War. The city where they defeated the Germans, right? Like 20 million whatever Russians died in total, but the Russians, Russians still are celebrating this to this day, right? They still celebrate it to this day, right? And it's interesting. Putin wants to invite Trump and Xi Jinping to the May 9th parade, right? The Russian kind of military victory parade, right? Where they always, every year, they commemorate the Second World War, right? And I showed you before, Trump has to oftentimes disillusion Putin, and there's all this rivalry between them, competitiveness. I don't think Trump will go. Trump will not go, obviously. He will not go there and stand there on Putin's left while Xi Jinping is to his right, and the largest military in the world with the most nuclear heads in the world is going to be parading. Trump is not going to go there. That would be admitting that he's lower on the pecking order. He's not going to do that, right? He's not going to do that. And there's too much competitiveness between them, right, to have that type of relationship. They can't have that. It's not the same as Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is fine with going there, and because Xi Jinping is fine with Putin being the muscle, right? You know, saying the Russians are the muscle, I'm the brain. This is what Xi Jinping thinks, right? He's thinking that we're the economic power, we're the brain, the Russians are the muscle, right? They're fine with that setup. That same setup will not work with Trump, obviously, in no way, right? Trump is not going to allow that type of public, humiliation in some ways, right? Or kind of being put down on the pecking order anyway. But anyways, back to this. We got Horus here. This is the war god, right? The war god. And we've got another one. We've got autonomy. So war, there's going to be a deal around war, but it's going to be a little bit hard to make this deal. We've got here with Saturn with Sun, which is basically karmic ending and karmic reckoning. And you got Soros, United Nations, and Wuhan. And they're all with Sun and Saturn. Saturn, right? So Sun and Saturn is the karmic ending of what? Of the globalists. Soros, Wuhan. These are both standing for the globalist leaders. And Wuhan, obviously, is a place that the globalists had a lot of things to do, right? And plays an important role in what the globalists did. And they're the big losers in this whole thing. There will be a deal made where the globalists will be the losers. They are the big losers. They're here. Soros and Wuhan is on Saturn and Sun, right? It's like the end of their dreams in some ways, right? It's not the final end of them, right? They will recuperate, they will regroup, but it's not the final end. But it's a temporary ending of their story in some ways, right? And there's another asteroid that I haven't put in here. I'm just realizing I haven't put it in, but it was here. It's very, very important. Actually, the most important one in my story here, but I forgot to put it in here, which is Europe. Europe, the asteroid Europe is here in the first degree of Aries. You got to take my word for it. It's here. I didn't put it in this chart. And it's the exact place where there's going to be the Saturn conjunction, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and where both Venus and Mercury, they go back to, right? They go back to on here. And it's conjunct Neptune, right? Stands for confusion and deception. Europe is there, right? So this allows us to put the pieces together. So what do we say? China and Russia, they're not going to be separated. I just showed you China and Russia, the asteroids are together. In this deal, it will not be possible for the Americans. Trump will try to do that, but he will not be able to get China to somehow, move away, get Russia to somehow move away from China. He will not succeed with that, right? The globalists, they're going to be losers in this. They're going to be big losers. Why? Because both Trump and Putin are anti-globalists. They're anti-globalists, both of them. They're going to make some decisions like World Health Organization and United Nations and certain other organizations that World Economic Forum and so on. These kind of organizations, they're going to go back. They're going to take a back seat because Trump and Putin will make some very clever moves in these negotiations that are going to outsmart the globalists, sideline the globalists, right? They're going to be losers in this. Not forever, but for some time, which is going to be very good for the world. So we can look forward to this. Third, the Europeans. The Europeans, I just showed you Europe. It wasn't in there, but it's there. The Europeans are going to be the big losers of this whole thing. First of all, they're going to be caught in deception. They're going to try to sabotage the deal. They're going to try to sabotage the deal in every way possible, right? And they're going to be the big losers of this whole thing. Remember, the Europeans called this emergency meeting right when it came out that Trump and Putin were talking. And there was this kind of like, there was a lot of social commentary, like this clown show. They got together like a table of clowns, you know, and a whole table of all of the European EU leaders. I'm not saying, you know, obviously the European leaders, when I talk about Europeans, I'm talking about Brussels and, you know, EU and the EU, pro-EU leaders, which are in most European countries right now, right? Apart from some exceptions, like mostly in the south and east of Europe, like Viktor Orban, who's obviously not part of them, right? Hopefully there's going to be more and more of those true Europeans, the true Europeans, which are not the same as these bureaucratic, you know, totalitarian, digital totalitarian European bureaucrats who are sitting in Brussels and most of the governments in Europe. They're going to be the big losers in this. They're going to be the big losers. They will try to sabotage this deal. They will try to sabotage it in many ways because the world that emerges afterward is going to be much worse for them. There's going to be consequences for Africa, South America, for China, for India especially. India is going to be coveted by everybody. But we'll look at those in other videos, in future videos. Right now, let's just keep this and understand that the relationship between Trump and Putin, it has the potential to change the world for the better, but it also has the potential to become very, 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 very adversarial because there's going to be so much competitiveness if the situation, if the circumstances force them into it, right? Into that adversarial situation. And keep in mind, the next years, 25, 26, 27, we have years of confusion coming up with the Saturn-Neptune constellation on the Aries ingress. We have years of confusion coming up, and it's possible, you know, we're not out of the woods yet at all, right? Not at all. Don't think that, you know, don't think that now this is going to happen and now there's no more conflict. No, we're not out of the woods yet at all. It's very well possible that with the Europeans, with the European leaders not relenting, you know, going in and for more and more conflict, they just kind of hell-bent on conflict with Russia, even though Trump is going to leave them for some time. But what happens if that escalates? If that really escalates, there may be a time where America cannot, you know, stay on the sidelines anymore, even though Trump is going to now try to set up a better way, a better deal with Russia. And think about the Middle East. The Middle East has so much conflict potential, more than any other region, right? So those are all topics for future videos for us to look at. Just what we can hold and keep in mind right now is that the world still is going to be a uncertain and volatile place in the coming years. That much is for sure. If you yourself want to navigate this uncertain and volatile world better, you can work with me. You can find the consultation links below. There you have all the information of how we can work together. We can map out your cosmic path, way, and potentials for your development and evolution, how you can maximize your own health, your wisdom, your abundance, your impact for yourself personally. You can only do that by knowing. You can do that in the best way by knowing the cycles that are coming up that are shaping your destiny. We can work on that together. And you can find out, we can obviously look at so many other angles for the political landscape and the global landscape and the spiritual and metaphysical battle, which is the most important one of all. On this channel, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next, and comment on the channel so that we help this channel grow. You are much appreciated. I wish you all the best. Be blessed.